Hello, this is 52 Weeks of Design Live. And I am going live today with Jason Bell of Blackberry Farms. There we go. I'm going to have to try that again. Hi!
Hey Alexa, how are you?
I am good, thanks. How are you?
Good.
Put you a little further away. I'm feeling very close to the camera. I hope you saw my little nudge.
I read that. Yeah.
I am working in Cashiers. So
I'm.
I feel
You're working. I'm in Cashiers right now.
you're in Cashiers now.
I'm.
Um, I Clubhouse.
Are you at the club? I am at the inn, the main inn, downstairs in the wine cellar right now.
I loved that. I loved that.
Have you been here?
I just was here a few weeks ago.
What?
Yeah, I am working for somebody who's building a house. We are building a house, and so I just went there for the first time and was just blown away.
Did you stay at a private residence or did you stay at the inn?
I didn't stay. I flew in and flew out.
Well, did you get to walk in the inn?
I did. I walked in.
Well, that,
Beautiful. When did you do it?
we started this project in 2019, I believe. Yeah, around April of 2019. And
So let's talk about all of the scope of what you do, because it's
it's a lot.
a lot. So start at the beginning. When did you begin this job? How did you get it? Obviously, you're at a wonderful design firm in New York.
Uh, I mean, I can either go forwards or backwards, whichever way. Let's start with where we are now. After living in New York for about 20 years, working for a very, old guard design firm, and then starting my own business, I kind of had that forever. And, my wife and I had 3 kids, all born in New York, and we decided it was time to hit a reset button and, get them out of the city. And, so we moved to my hometown, Mobile. And I commuted back and forth to New York, keeping my business running there. And then an opportunity came up from a friend who said, you should apply for this project, this job at BlackBerry. And the whole time I was like, I want to get closer to home so that I wasn't going, back and forth to New York. Like Atlanta to Mobile would have been really good, or something there in case, you run into a storm, I could drive home. But so I met.
What was the job description that you answered?
So
Like, how big of a job it was?
they were looking for a director of design, and I didn't really know what that entailed at that point until I got in and sort of met with them and So I drove to BlackBerry, and I met with the entire executive team. I met with the proprietor, Mary Celeste, the person whose position I was going to be taking, which was Chris Bell. And they all we went through this process of interview, and then, I mean, they said, well, we're building this big mountain project. So I don't know if you've ever been to Blackberry Farm. It seems not, and we should try and figure that out. But when you're at Blackberry, it's in a cove, and the view is this spectacular mountain. And no one, as a Blackberry hotel guest, no one would ever want that view to be spoiled. And so I think the Bells basically said, we have a way for it to not be spoiled, and they began developing that. So as that as my interview, it was like, we need you to develop this place for us. And so I came in there, and at that point, Chris sort of stayed on as her acting position for about 6 months to kind of get my feet wet. And then they were like, okay, well, let's start seeing some stuff. And at that point, we had a team of either 9 or 10 people. And the more that I learned about, what BlackBerry really was as a core and what the mountain was going to be, and there were going to be, 85 private lots that were going to have 85 private houses. And they said, it would be great if we have this team that's going to try and go for getting those projects. And, but first we need our mountain done. So we started going through the process, and thousands and thousands of square feet later, spas and restaurants and pools to swim in. And I mean, I have some notes here. I'm trying to think. 68 rooms, and every one of them are different. And so all that kind of got into the planning phase, and that began around February of, well, there was a lot done before me, but the design side of it was really going on in 17. And we sort of, it opened in 2019, April of 19. So in 2 years, it was more work done on, than I had done in probably 10 years. I mean, it was just that much volume. And as well, sort of, I had to build a design team, in the middle of kind of nowhere, that was people who were talented and wanted to come and wanted to work and be a part of that, what it became. So, an interesting piece of all that is that,
What year?
Say it again?
What year are we?
17.
17.
Mm-hmm. So, people always ask about, how this all goes down there. And I'm like, you have to have a really good client always. And I will say, in New York, I got to work for household names left and right. And it was a real treat. But, there's very few people who get the opportunity to get to work for a family like the Bell family. And not only, it was my dream job was always to do this boutique hotel.
It's a dream job of a lot of designers. I have discovered.
So that opportunity came up, and it wasn't just do this one hotel. It turned into, they bought, another one, and we did another one. And then they were like, and then you start understanding that we have this ultra unique situation with our team because we have these living portfolios that have, hundreds of rooms everywhere that are constantly being redone and done, and restaurants at all of these places that get redone and done. And who gets to, it's all the Bell family. So it's, they're like this constant provider of endless, and then that sort of lends off into their private homes and projects that we would get that were working for people from all over the U.S. at that point. So,
And how many people do you work for with properties? Sorry, I'm trying to get comfortable.
um,
People do you work for with properties on the grounds? What kind of percentage? I mean, like, you work for tons of people who have those houses there, those lots.
so like currently, and it really is always sort of cyclical. However, we have, I think, 32 current projects going, private homes.
Yeah,
That,
all of them were scattered everywhere.
They're either on Blackberry Farm, on Blackberry Mountain, somewhere up here around High Hampton, and then some of them are people who we have very close relationships with, and they say, oh, well, we want you to do our place in the Bahamas, or, oh, they have a house at Blackberry Mountain and we're finished it, and they're like, God, we need our other house, our main house done, or, our fifth house, or whichever one. So, we started sort of taking on these projects of doing a project in Maine and a project in the Bahamas and a project in, Nashville and Knoxville and Atlanta. I mean, they're everywhere now. But it always comes back to, the bulk of what we're doing right now is still really getting through the development of Blackberry Mountain. And now and you saw how many houses are going up here. I mean, Cashiers is just becoming a super hot spot. So
It's gorgeous.
I hope it probably rained when you were here, but
No,
if not, you were
it was
like,
a perfect day.
oh, that's good. Well, it's a
Walk
perfect
a
morning.
lot and walk around. Actually, it was pretty hot, but then when we got, there was a nice breeze.
Yeah.
Uh, it was really beautiful. And I wanted to steal all of the floor mats that say Hi Hampton. I think actually, my mother once stole the floor mat of the American Hotel in Sag Harbor to give it to me because it said AH. Now, we'll pretend that I didn't say that. She's probably going to be outraged that I revealed her felonious bent.
Right.
Yeah, it was a beautiful place. And God, I have so many questions. How frequently do you change the rooms? Do you change the vibe? Do you go through phases where you're like, okay, I want to tweak the palette of everything, like what goes on?
Well, let's start with probably property. So Blackberry Farm right now, we're redoing a lot. It goes through sort of the guests are rough on hotel spaces, like super rough. And, so we have our team, we have 32 people on our team. One of our teams only deals with, that's a team of 5. And each one of the 3 people on that team, one's for High Hampton, one's for Blackberry Farm, and one is for Blackberry Mountain. And they are literally just circling, looking for something wrong always. And so we want we always want it to be perfect. So that in itself is like it's a dream job for someone, each one of those 3 positions. But then like the common spaces, they get tired after a while. Things come in and out of fashion. And
So there is an appreciation of zeitgeist, because at the same time, everybody has a sense. Everybody who knows Blackberry Farm has a sense of what that aesthetic is as well. So you do maintain your sensibility.
we do, but like for instance, I will say we just finished completing the whole main house. I'm just going to use that because that was the original country house for the Bells. And in this go around, the house really had more of probably a masculine feeling to it. And I think that probably was, a lot of direction that probably came from Sam, prior to his passing. And then, with Mary Celeste being our proprietor, and you meet with her, and she's just got this ease and feminine touch about her, and that comes out, and sort of where you start pulling things from, and who that, you want that to feel like her house, and that she's welcoming you to it. And so you start putting things in front of her, and she just starts, she's really with it. And our teams keep it's just like a tumbleweed. It keeps getting bigger and bigger and better and better. And so, but that, we won't redo the house again for 20 more years.
Okay.
So,
famous words. How long, what's the lifespan of a bedroom, a guest room?
7 years. I mean, you're replacing the carpet at that point. You're replacing, bedside. We try to maintain them all, but there's always going to be watermarks. There's always going to be this. There's always going to be that. Vacuum cleaners dinging things up or whatever. So, it's 7 years. It needs a refresh.
What are some of the restrictions that you have to work around? I mean, I've done an inn in Quogue, great, I love it, a place called Halleck House, and I got to be involved at the very beginning, so I don't know all of these nuances,
Question. The reason I think that our spaces are so great is because we involve everybody in it. I mean, if in the beginning, before you're redoing something, you're involving maintenance people, you're involving in-room dining people. Is there a space for them to bring, food? Is there, this is all before you're even thinking about how pretty is it going to be, but it's just endless. I mean, are they going to have the right lighting? Are we going to fix a problem that's been here for 15 years and we really need to replace windows. So then you've got the maintenance teams from the properties who are saying, we need time in that renovation to do this. Or do the bathroom tiles, do they need to be replaced because we don't want to take the room offline for, another 20 years or whatever. So you really get all of these people involved. And then I'm only talking about rooms at that point. Forget common spaces. Like if it's a restaurant and we have to redo that, I mean, there's so many events are involved because they have to figure out you've moved the hotel main restaurant to a place that they're normally used to using. So they have to time. So, is it nuances? That's probably a weird word, but I mean, there's just so many cooks that need to throw their piece into that recipe.
That
So
could
only doing it once.
that could be like the kiss of death in some situations, but you guys are this family,
Right.
so there's like a totally different relationship.
Yeah, it's not like you're redoing if you do a country club, I mean, there's a committee and everybody has their, or the lobby of a building in New York. I mean, there's how many voices do we need to hear? But here at BlackBerry, it's like I said, it's that one ultimate client. And, as long as we go and look at things and we see things, we breathe things to the table that, Mary Celeste does a lot of traveling. Her family does, Sandy does, and they bring things back. I receive more messages from her. She's like, this is cool. And I just keep them in a bank and, because she sees so much. So it's really nice to be able to collaborate with someone like that who is not just like, this is my look and this is the only way I want to do things. They're just a great family to work with.
Now you came out of it turned into Fleming Bell, right?
It was originally Irvin and Fleming, and then it switched to Irvin Fleming Bell. Yes.
And, so obviously that was a very Max look. Um, I know exactly what that look was.
Sure you do.
So I mean, what was it like going from that to going to this? I mean, obviously this was an organic.
Over time, I had when I left from Irvin and Fleming, I think the one thing that it was always kind of underneath of my skin a little bit. I want to do more. I don't want to just do the red, yellow, green rooms and the chintz and the blood, I felt like it was repetitive and the same chintzes and the same plaids and whatever. And I think probably the biggest push on that was I got a client that bought a duplex penthouse on the Upper West Side at one point, and she was coming out of another, very traditional apartment, and she's like, I think we're going to be traditional. And then I got to work with these architects who were extreme modernist, and I was like, it was such a moment of like, I got to learn something. And that was kind of really early in my career, and I was like, well, I think I want to learn a lot more. And and that project ended up in AD, and so at 30 years old, that was the pinnacle. It was the one thing I only ever wanted in design. And I'm like, once I get that, I can go change my career and be a painter or whatever, And it happened, but it was really, that became like this this need for like wanting to try something in different arenas. I mean, you could blindfold me and I could give you a gorgeous toile room or a chintz room or, whatever. But, I think you gain all these skills by getting these opportunities to work for different people who have different tastes and different flavors. And, for me, it's sort of like I want to take that in, and I want other people to understand this is the essence of design. It's like these people give you opportunities and you should learn from it, and you broaden your wings, and you're not just a traditional designer, but you can be a modern designer, and you can like purple if you don't like it, or you could, whatever. But I guess getting from that to BlackBerry, it was just right time, right place, great opportunity, and yeah, here we are.
Are your kids at all interested in design?
There, yes. um, maybe not. I have my oldest is probably, I'd say, more fashion forward. My youngest is very artistic. I mean, she can draw probably. She's going to be a good drawer, or whatever you call that. And then my middle, she's very good at like um, uh, putting things together. Like she can make scrap art, or and great in coloring. They all have. It's all there. I mean, you have. I mean, I've between my design and my wife being an architect, it's there's a lot in there.
So I didn't know your wife was an architect. That's amazing. And your parents were also.
Like a pseudo decorator. My father, I grew up around construction. I mean, I was the kid who's he's like sweep the job site, whatever. So I was always around that. It was residential and commercial, and I mean, I bucked it really hard. I didn't want to do it, but it just. I went to school and I was like, I'm gonna go and do marketing, and I was in my last class of marketing, and I was like, I don't really know what I'm going to market. And I called my parents, and I was like, I'm going to drop out of school this semester. This is my senior year. And it was just the best decision I ever made. But I actually, just switched my major. And then I did a 4-year design program in a year and a half. I ended up, my wife was from Tuscaloosa. You're going to know who I'm getting this to. She had, her mother was very good friends with Timo Callahan. And so I went to New York, and I went for a spring break.
But you met him a lot once you lived in New York at Clarence House, right?
Yeah. So, Marion was like, you have to go see Timo. He's so connected in New York, and he'll help you. And I met with him on a Wednesday, and we had lunch, and we went back to his office, and he's like, where is your portfolio? Where's your resume? I was like, I'm just here to not be in school right now. I'm going to deal with that whenever I get finished. She's like, get your parents on the phone and fax, that resume in or whatever. So his fishbowl of, office that was in Clarence House, and that old scrolly fax machine that sat behind his desk, and he turned it around and he sent it out to everybody in New York. I mean, so on Thursday and Friday, I ended up with 11 interviews, and all 11 said, come back and bring your portfolio. And so I came back 2 weeks later, and I got 11 offers. One being from your dad.
That's so cool.
It was like the craziest thing ever. I mean, I kept going back to Timo, and I was like, what do I do?
Yeah, totally. We should all be a little more Timo.
Everybody needs more Timo.
Everybody needs more Timo, but we also need to be more Timo. We all
help people
do that for young talent, because that's an amazing story.
It was, it was unexpected, but it really did give a great sort of platform to jump off on in New York for sure. So,
yeah, so cool. I mean, I know you're not originally from New York, and that I'm sure factored into leaving, and the fact that your wife wasn't either. Did it just exhaust you, or was it the kids portion?
it was the kids. Our two oldest were in school, and they were at Avenues, and that private school New York thing, and the third one was coming up, and I was like, I'm not a banker. And then we sort of started looking, and we were like, all of our friends had started moving out of the city, and we had gone from the Upper East Side to Sutton Place, and then when we were on our honeymoon, we're like, let's move downtown, and then we moved to Mercer Street.
Oh, love.
And then we got down to Lake Street, and we got into Tribeca, and then we got to
water.
Battery Park City for the last sort of 7 years, and I was like, if we go any further south, we're going to be at Staten Island. So I'm like, where are we going to shoot this arrow and go to? And we everywhere, and it got to a point where it's like, well, it would be really easy to go back home, commute and figure out how do I, and it just happened to work out. So, I think my kids probably suffer from it most, just with the amount that I travel. But it is, hopefully it's going to keep a door open for them that they get to walk through at some point later.
For sure. For sure. And they're citizens of the world.
Right.
Had all of those experiences. Um, what was COVID like for you just starting those big projects?
So, uh, well, I remember when COVID hit, like when things started really shutting down, I was like, okay, well, the airlines are not going to get me to Round Top. I'm driving to Round Top, because we were trying to open this hotel, and I had a deadline, and I was like, I'm going to go out. I'm just going to go.
And you guys weren't worried about, I mean, it must have been about hospitality.
That was
Or is it so isolated that it felt safe?
so. We had a very different experience in the South with COVID than I think a lot of people did around the world. I think a lot of people, you know, I don't know. We were in bubbles, and so we weren't caught up in buildings, and we weren't in, others probably just passed it to each other, and then it got over it quicker. And
You weren't in dense urban settings where it felt as threatening
yes,
as it did.
and I think the media as well probably was a lot of that, and how it was in everyone's face in the north and different sort of big cities versus the way the media would be in the South. And it's just like, so it was a different experience. And I had a lot of friends who were still in the Northeast, and I was like, wow, that, y'all are still wearing masks. And I would still be coming to New York, and I was like, oh my God, I gotta get my mask on, but constantly in airplanes. And it was the best thing ever for me personally, not for the airlines, but I mean, it was like flying private everywhere. So,
Oh, you mean because it was so empty?
well, yeah, I would get on an airplane, 2 to 4 times a week to get somewhere.
Like getting off it and writing on those little pads so they could track you
That,
was interesting.
there was a lot of tracking, but I don't think, as far as how it, dealt with our properties and our projects, the properties really excelled. You had a lot of people who at that point were looking for places to go because they weren't going to go to Europe. They weren't going, and people were changing plans. And I don't know what the proper number is, but I would say, our capacities at our hotels went through the roof because people could get in a car and they could drive. And, if you ever are at Blackberry Farm or Blackberry Mountain, sometimes you don't even know if there's anybody else there. I mean, it's that.
I thought we had agreed that you were going to make sure I got to Blackberry Farm. Like, what do you mean if I'm never there? Isn't that your job? Yeah, it must be an incredible freedom to work for a family developer who's like not in it. They're not going away. They're so in it for the long haul that the immediacy of all of these things that can hit you just don't have a place for you.
It wasn't. I would. I think the audience that they probably gained from it was so much more. From I think that just the company in general probably really benefited from that. From a design perspective, we were full on. Like, construction never stopped in the South. So our design team had 6 weeks off, and that was it. And there was a lot, everybody was like, well, I want to go and work from home, and I want to blah, blah, blah. I'm like, you can't. We have 20 something jobs. You still, those didn't stop. Construction was basically deemed needed. And so, the contractors were out on every job, and we had OACs and site meetings, and, we shifted our sort of who came in the office. We were having sanitizing stuff everywhere, and we had temperature checks at the door, and, really trying to protect each other. But it just was business as usual in most cases, because we had to keep the projects moving. And, and then the hotel just kept going too. Everything except for those 6 weeks that everything just really shut down.
Has there been any disturbance in employment at the hotels? Like, do you still have the labor force that you always had? Did it change? Like, what happened there?
You know,
Any?
so I mean, I'd speak very vaguely about that because I wouldn't want to. I'm not. I think across the entire U.S., we have shortages of everything now. If
Yeah.
it's a pilot, it's not a line chef. It could be a teacher. Whatever. We had, when we start hiring someone. I'm just going to speak from the design side. Sometimes it takes us. We went for 6 or 8 weeks of posting, looking for jobs, and nothing, not one resume, nothing came in. And so, does it happen in every other arena? Yes. Is there, you get into these situations where the world we live in today, and you have people who start jumping jobs because the grass is always greener somewhere else, and it does happen. It is complicated to find really good help, though, for sure. But I think what we were able to also, due to COVID, it sort of opened up. You had these people who were like flooding out of the bigger cities, and so the resumes that were coming in were people who would have been very talented, who would have wanted to be in New York, but now they're not going to be in New York because they moved back to their hometowns or whatever. And so it's like, well, there's a good opportunity, that COVID made happen for us.
Yeah.
But we have a lot of really crazy.
A little angry.
Did what?
Angry and jealous. Like, you had such a nice COVID experience. And do you still live in Alabama?
I do. I live in Mobile.
So,
An airplane.
you.
Do what?
What's your commute?
The worst. I can either drive, 7.5 hour drive from Mobile to Knoxville with a time change, which would be 8.5 hours, or I can get on an airplane and fly on a 6 a.m. flight for 50 minutes to Atlanta, get off the plane, have a layover, time change in the middle of that, get on another plane for 28 minutes and land in Knoxville. So I can leave at 6 a.m. and be in Knoxville by like 10:30 if the airline doesn't give you a big layover time. So that's, makes it doable. Yeah, so I have those two options.
And do you have a place
I have a little apartment in a little area of Knoxville called Maryville, which is very close to the airport. And, I can be to my office. I can walk to my office from there, or I can be at the airport in about 7 minutes. So it's super convenient. Because of the projects that are everywhere, that are either, they're either through BlackBerry or through my office in New York. A lot of times, the Knoxville airport is, there's direct flights to New York, which we do a lot of sourcing from there. But we'd go to Knoxville and fly Knoxville to Atlanta, and then we're sourcing in California or Brimfield or, so it's very easy to sort of move around from there, but you always are going to have that little leg that you really don't want. But due to that leg, I get segments, and then I get diamond status. So
thank God for Delta.
I know, it's great.
Yeah, earning it on segments is the hard way. So good for you.
I mean, it's literally in those airplanes like people are in cars. So
you're really just everywhere. Where's your favorite place to travel for work?
Ooh, I mean, you can blindfold me and I can go to New York, and it's going to be efficient just because of what is there, how long it is. It's also very easy to run to ADAC, and we have lots of great partners that are throughout that building.
Right.
I would probably guess we are, based on what our vendors tell us, we're probably one of the largest buyers at Round Top. So we're out there twice a year. Again, you go back to what you asked me earlier about getting challenged with different types of design. I get challenged with new types of shopping and looking for new types of vendors. So, you know, it's a little more complicated to get to the West Coast, but like there's spectacular sourcing out there. And, you know, there's I don't know if you've ever done the Rose Bowl, but the first Sunday of every month, the Rose Bowl parking lot turns into the best flea market you've ever been to.
Really?
And yeah, it's like vintage clothing and vintage. There's going to be junk, but I mean, you've got to just be able to figure out how to pick through it. But it's great, and then you can go do that, and then you go to all those shops that are all throughout, you know, that area. So, you know, and the art is different, and it's you know, you're looking at different scale of things. You know, a lot of California vibe is very fitting for Blackberry Mountain.
Sure.
You know, a lot of sort of New York vibe is a little more, you can get into those traditional arenas, and then it's perfectly fitting for Blackberry Farm. Sometimes, you know, like Round Top or Brimfield would be great when we're looking for replacements for you know, for High Hampton, because of, you know, and the people who are in these hotels, like I said, it's sort of like our living portfolios. They're like, well, we want that. And I'm like, okay, well, I know where to get all that stuff that came from, you know. So you just sort of start going back to those. You can go reuse those vendors again.
When you retire furniture, where does it go?
Oh, wow. Depends on the project. So if you come look at,
I remember buying bedside tables that had been deaccessioned from like the Crillon in Paris, and I was like, oh, I'm really glad to get these. And I know you guys that you can now buy things, Blackberry Farm branded things, and it'd be so much fun to have like Blackberry Farm tag sale of like.
so, you know, I did talk to Mary Celeste about that recently, and we're going to, you know, a lot of these times you have to keep these things, and we have masses of things that go into our hotel that are spares. You know, you have a spills a red wine on a chair. Well, we've got 5 more in the warehouse, and it's like you make a phone call, and then the team responsible goes and gets that neutral chair, and they take it over there. Or you may have someone who's like, I need a recliner because whatever reason. There's all reasons that you're always not, you never want to say no to the guest. And
No.
so we have a lot of spares. Now, when we do the changes, sometimes we repurpose them and they become, they will go to another area, like, but they have to completely change looks. Like we may slip cover the entire thing and no one ever knows that it was those chairs that were in that restaurant or whatever. But, you know, Mary Celeste and I talked about trying to do some type of attic sell situation where when we're sure we don't need them, like, why wouldn't we want to sell? People always want to take something home from these journeys. And I'm like, well, you can have some bedside tables, some lamps.
That's why people are hiring you to do their houses because they love their visits so much they want to live there.
Yeah. But that, you know, I think that's a product of unbelievable number of teams that are making that experience spectacular. I mean, it is from top to bottom of who works there. I mean, it can be the housekeeping team, it can be the food and beverage, it's design.
You're an owner of a house, that's not what you're thinking about, right? And that might be the reason you loved it, but in your attempt to recreate it for yourself, you're thinking more like, okay, I'd love to get that chair.
Right.
Like if I were a great customer of Blackberry Farm and I just called you and was like, I gotta get some of those tables, could I? You're like, oh, I don't want to open this Pandora's box.
Okay. Probably not. We try to be very protective of what we do, and it is, you know, we want for our guests to really live it and experience it and want to come back, and we just don't want it copied. And you know, but we do give out certain sources, and we do try and have a kind. It's a very complicated response that we give to our guests. We only give out paint colors. Sometimes we'll give out this, you know, stone or whatever. But a lot of what we use, depending on what property, they're one of a kind, unique items. So it's not like you're, you know, I can say, yeah, I can get you a pair of those old bamboo tables. You know, I'll you know, I may not find another pair like that for 5 more years.
So tell me about the things that you guys are selling now, the Blackberry Farm things.
So that is a lot of times the volume of what we do, whether it is going into our hotel rooms or whether it is going into a private home. I like to have a lot of stuff on hand because, you know, I think as a designer, you can really try to plan every single teeny tiny little detail out so that it's all boxed and perfectly ready, and you go do this installation, and your installation happens in 3 days and you're out. But a lot of times, you know, you have to switch stuff around, and some scale didn't work or whatever. So we try to accumulate, you know, we shop so much for these clients that I will buy things and say, I know I can put that in a project later. So that they don't sit very long.
What a wonderful thing to be able to do.
So there's not a lot of people who get to do that, I will tell you. You know, you see something, we all want to put things we love into projects. So, you know, and then some of them they sit for a while, and somebody will say, oh, well, that one's been sitting there for 2 years. And so then I'm like, oh, I forgot about that one. And then I'll go to one of our teams and I'm like, you have to put this, it's got to move. Somebody's watching it, you know. You know, it's really hard. That's a whole thing to focus on in itself. So, you know, the quicker we're able to move things, the more you get to see sort of it shift around. But, you know, it's always like just cool, unique little things. I think a little bit of the experience of where we kind of launched that was trying to understand what moves quick and what doesn't. And so I think as hotel guests come in, you know, we have gift shops at all of our hotels. They all want a little takeaway. And I think what we learned was it's so much easier to have smalls because they kind of want to take it back with them on their plane, or we can ship it if they don't. And so when that got to that point, I was like, well, what are we doing with this bureau? You know, we need to put it in a project now so the movers come and get it, because we would get a price to get a bureau to Ohio or whatever. And it's like 3 times the cost of the bureau. I'm like, so that's not going to work right now. We just weren't ready for that. But, you know, so we ended up.
If I may be devil's advocate, you know how when you have you're like, oh, I'm so excited. This artwork, this painting is inexpensive. And then you get the framing price and it's 3 times the artwork. But isn't that still better than getting finding artwork that's 12 times more expensive and also the really expensive frame? I mean, sometimes it's it pays for itself.
So I do, you know, and the old print shop is one of my favorite sources in New York. And every time I'm up there, I will go and dig through those files. Last time we were up there, I probably bought 150 pieces of art. And some were small, some were large, some were whatever. And it wasn't the maps or the birds, or they were just cool, unique things that we're always looking for, and they're affordable. And yes, so we have them ship them straight to our framer. Some of them we assign to teams, and we're like, you need to put this goes in that project, this goes in that one, and then we have all these leftovers. I don't really show those very often because we can use them all, and it's hard to find them. So I'm a little stingy with those.
What is the worst part of your job?
Oh gosh.
What can I not imagine that you have to deal with that is really, really tough?
Ooh.
You can also pass. If that's like a real conversation.
I say things, but these are the things that make it all so amazing. Managing people is just not fun. and we have a big team, and and it's complicated. You really want to give everybody a shot. You want to mentor all of them as much as you can, and it takes time to do all of that. And everybody comes to the table with their own personal lives, and that intermixed with our processes of getting from A to Z on a project. Sometimes it's frustrating to me. I think some of the processes, so that's on the client side because you're dealing with certain teams on those. But then, on the corporate side of like when we're trying to get like something done, it's that mix I talked to you about earlier. I'm like, when can we have this meeting? When can all 7 or 8 of these people get together? Because I've got to hear from food and beverage. I've got to hear from events. I've got to get all these things so I can wrap my head around what we're trying to, and that is very frustrating because everyone's so busy. It's good. This little wolf.
Sorry.
So that it is. I mean, but that's would I exchange that for something different? No, because if you don't have that, we don't get these perfect projects coming out that everybody oohs and ahs over. So, it's a double-edged sword.
Do you get to walk into a space and just say, I want to change it? Are you given that latitude?
Yes.
That's so great.
So I now I'm going to clarify. You said, do I get to walk in and say, I want to change it? And I will, and Mary Celeste and I meet on a bi-weekly basis. And then I'll see her, randomly for other things as well. But, if I'm walking somewhere and I'm like, God, that looks tired, or that really, I'll say, I need you to go by and look at this. And so, a prime example would just be, it's kind of just how is something wearing well, or is it not? And when, or we, how, and then you go to another, our accounting teams or our, who I report to, and I'm like, when is this on the cycle of when it gets to be replaced? Because it's time to plant a seed with the right people that it needs to happen ASAP, so, but, it's just, you have all these people who you have to, work with. But I do see a lot that I would like to change for the better.
Great. It's like a constant process of refining and getting better and pushing, and you want to delight your guests, right? All the time. You want both the familiar, but the up to date.
Right. It's like, is it tired? Is it getting out of vogue? I mean, all of those things. And so you start thinking about them way in advance because it takes so long to make it happen, to get through that. When can we take it offline? And when can we, when do you get all those players together to say, this is how we're going to make it better? Forget supply chain. I mean, that's a whole nother element. But, so yeah, we really think through, we're years in advance of what is going to happen because we know when their cycle's coming around.
And that's the 7-year cycle.
Ish.
Or that might be for rooms, but for public spaces probably is a faster clip. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the public spaces are, we really focus on them really hard because it's very hard to take them offline. Like you have to, it is almost impossible. So you got to get it right when you do it.
I was enchanted by a sink at High Hampton you're probably sitting below it. In the lobby when you go to the bathroom under the stairs.
Oh, the big long trough sinks?
Well, yeah. And then you painted coral underneath. And I was just like, I love this sink. Weird what, there are a lot of things. There are lampshades that I was like, oh, I know that lamp. I know that fabric. I like that. That looks great. It's beautiful. You've done a beautiful job.
Thank you.
What I don't recall from the questionnaire, what you said is your dream job.
Did I answer that one? I don't know. Honestly, it would be hard to top this one. just, I have a lot of freedom. Um, you know, I have a great team that I have a ton of help and unbelievably experienced people that are, it's, people have asked me before, and I'm like, I like in the first 2 years of working here, it was basically like I got my master's in design because I had all of the financial side of things and all of the HR department things, all that stuff I never had, as when you own your own business, unless it's, massive or whatever. And I was like, oh my God, there's somebody who really made me pinch down and understand how much does a room, like, how do you really want to sell it to someone? And I can show a photograph out of our portfolio now and said, that room is $134 a square foot. That room is $720 a square foot. I never knew that I would have a need or want to do that, but I understand now because of all these professionals that you get to work around, why, you always had when you deal with people, there's always a financial person in the couple. Somebody's always like, what is this really going to cost? And,
hey, on Instagram. Like 4 people screaming in the entry. I beg your pardon.
No problem. But it's just been like the lessons you get to learn are just beyond when you get into a situation like this that has this many like ultra smart people. So this is the dream job.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly it looks like it. And it looks like, you don't get beautiful interiors, I don't think, unless there's some happiness there. And there's like tons of happiness when you walk into those spaces. It just lifts you. Okay, quick. I know we're getting to the end. What about seasonality? What is your baseline? Like, you get tons of snow in the winter, yeah?
Dustings. You talking about where? Here or there? Here or Knoxville?
Both
get snow, really. This hotel at High Hampton is kind of in a tropical rainforest. And if you get one of those big rains that comes and you happen to hit that nor'easter at the same time, they'll get a foot of snow here. Doesn't happen a lot, but it has. And, I would say this hotel is very seasonal because it always was.
You have a winter and summer thing? Like, do you switch out some covers? Do you?
Here, not yet. We do at the farm. Those are we used to, and now that we have our new, glamorous look, it's really beautiful. I don't know if we'll have slip covers for a little while or not. We really are super proud of it, and sometimes the slip covers, you use them because they're going to get you that 7th year before you can spend the money to like refresh it or whatever. But there's always something. Like last year was the first Christmas at High Hampton. It was the first year it was ever open. So seasonally, we had to develop what is High Hampton's Christmas going to be.
Yeah.
We get 4 seasons at the farm and the mountain, and it is really just magic to be in all of them. The fireplaces aren't, they're all turned off. They don't, the teams don't come in and light the wood fires in every room, when it's summer, so you don't get that. But as soon as fall hits, you have leaves that are changing colors, and then you have those cool nights where you have your fire in your room. And so every time that you're in all of these spaces, because they do have the 4 seasons, you get to sort of experience them very differently.
Do you sleep in the rooms to see what they feel like?
Yes. I do. So we do a couple of things. We have something called Room Quest on every property, and we walk them always, and there's different rooms that go on each of those. And then there are, when I am up here, I will stay in the room, and then they try to shift me so that I get through as many as I can, because I'm going to pick it apart. And people, they don't like when I come here, maybe. I don't know.
Also, your marketing background must be really great for this.
Probably, yeah.
It was a long time ago, but I mean, it's part of understanding what you're offering.
100%. But I mean, it also makes you understand when we have in-house marketing that runs all of these properties, and you know, you, I understand what they're going for, and so when you're trying to, you know, yes, I use that background, but I mean, it's a better understanding of each and every piece, like all the players in it, for sure.
Okay, what's next for you? What's happening? I mean, at BlackBerry, given that you've got your dream job and you're going to stay in it forever, what's next at your dream job?
Well, there's lots of people listening. I would love a new hotel. um, I think if the Bells ever did another one, that would be. It's always, they're fun. They are a ton of fun. I think keeping developing what we have right now, as our properties begin to get fuller, I think we're really wanting to strive and like make do better projects. Make them not that they're bigger, but they're better. Like the product is better, or you really want to maybe more and more custom things. We do a lot of custom, but I mean, so I think it's just making the project like deeper and better. I think that
Right, filling it and getting it down to that perfect. It's a great goal. I mean, it's a great goal in anything, right? Just to get better and better and better and better.
yeah.
Um, well, thank you so much for hopping on this and talking to me, and thank you for the forthcoming invitation to stay at Blackberry Farm, which I know is coming.
We will be in touch about that for sure. And
Uh,
check on your job. Come stay here.
yeah, I'm sure I will. I'm sure I will.
Food is amazing.
And I'll just hang out in the bathroom looking at that beautiful coral sink. It really spoke to me. That whole bathroom made me so happy. And it is great to go places where you see little details where you're like, this just makes me happy.
Oh, good.
Most mundane things are just incredibly important. Um, anyway,
Thank
thank
you
you.
for hearing all about what we do, and it's just been a real treat. So I appreciate it.
Congratulations on all the beautiful work. I mean, you've got your hands full.
Thank
It's
you.
a care about.
All right. Well,
All right. Much love. Thank you so much.
I will reach out and we'll connect when I'm in New York next time.
And I'm sure I'm gonna be in Cashiers.
You're coming here, and I'll switch my schedule and be here when you're here.
Love
Just show
that.
you more details.
Okay, let's do that. I love that. All right. Speak to you
Sounds.
soon. Bye.
Bye, Alexa.